Hey guys, I am Kristen Howerton and I blog at Raging It's a Minivan.
I'm Paul Martin. I blog at Sophia.
Paul and I try to have weekly discussions on politics in a civil way. And it's been a couple weeks though, actually, since we chatted.
It's been a while.
And
we're sorry about that.
Yeah. We are still working on bringing this to you as a podcast, and that should be launching fairly soon. Lots of behind the scenes goings on about that. You know, I have to say, Paul, we haven't spoken in a while, and the world really, we've been very cynical about things. The last time we spoke, it was in regards to the rise of white supremacists, and it's just kind of been a shit show since then. It's not gotten a lot better.
I think that I have, I'm a Republican, we all know that, and I talk to a lot of Republican friends, and many of them want to defend, they want to say that people are being divisive. We live in divisive times.
I'm hearing that,
too. And everybody agrees to that, but here's the deal, like, if you own a business and you're the president, and there's division in your company, the buck stops with the president. Whether the president contributed or not, or the boss contributed or not, we have a problem, and our president does not seem to be quelling the division at all, as far as I'm concerned.
I think he's stoking it like it's a reality TV show. It really does feel like, on Survivor or Big Brother, when they add an element of drama in an effort to get people fighting, because it's interesting. I mean, I think he gets off on watching all of us arguing and fighting, and I think he loves attention more than he loves the American people.
Yeah, and we've said before, when we first had this vision almost 2 years ago, the idea was that we would debate in a civil way the differences, different ideologies between me on the right and her on the left, and Trump has galvanized us. And can we talk about Puerto Rico?
Let's.
I mean, this is just a perfect example. And here's the thing, you guys know I'm a Republican, and I'm going to say this every single time. We could do better. We could do better, because Trump shows up, and I
agree. I agree. I was a Republican.
Right. But
yeah,
as Republicans, the Republicans that just can't bring themselves to speak truly about what's going on need to. Trump goes up, and I have this on my Facebook page, the recording of him saying Trump doing his press conference. He just arrives. Yes. He's sitting there, and he says, "I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you are throwing our budget out of whack."
Now, I just want to say, people may be a little ignorant on Puerto Rico. They are a U.S. territory. I mean, they are U.S. citizens. Yeah. They do not get to vote, but they are under our jurisdiction and, have all of the same rights to be cared for, as the folks in Houston who were also devastated.
Yeah.
And he does not seem to see them that way.
No, and we always go back to race, but again, it strikes me as a bit odd, because I don't remember him dueling with Florida nor Houston.
No.
But he went on to say, after he said, "You're throwing our budget out of whack, every death is a whore." I'm reading, this is a transcript. But if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, and you look at what happened here with really a storm that was overpowering, nobody's ever seen it. Then he says, "What's your death count on this? 16 people?" Well, there were thousands in Katrina. So is he shaming them?
Well, that isn't even the worst soundbite. The worst soundbite is he said on Twitter that these people aren't taking care of their own.
Yes.
They're just expecting to be taken care of. And, again, I know we keep coming back to race, but there are certainly some tropes about Hispanic people in the United States. Some negative and completely untrue stereotypes about, Hispanics, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans being lazy. Those are horrible and completely untrue stereotypes, especially for anybody who lives in California. I mean, we know that Mexicans are the hardest working people in the state. But, it's really gross and offensive to me that he's playing on this particular stereotype of, Puerto Ricans, that they are lazy. And just to insinuate that they are lazy when they are trying to survive
a massive hurricane.
And, we're seeing photos of children, cleaning up. And, the president walking around in waders with a bullhorn trying to help people. Not the president, though. But, it's just, and then he referred to her as nasty because she was honest. And, it's infuriating and it's gross and it's embarrassing.
Yeah, I didn't follow it real closely, but I did see, I think, a live interview with her where she didn't really have the diplomacy. And again, I understand it's a crisis, but there does seem to be a certain level. And I think she said something like...
This is the mayor of San Juan.
The mayor of San Juan. And this is before Trump went out. But she said something like...
Carmen Cruz.
Yeah, we are dying, and if you don't... And again, it's probably true. It seemed a little bit theatrical to me. But again, she was seeing things on the ground that probably caused her to speak in that way that mayors of the other two cities didn't. But again, I want to just underscore as a Republican how I bring these things up as the one on the right in this room to say that our party, this doesn't make our party look good.
No.
These comments, why are we fighting with the mayor in the midst of a major crisis? Leaders unite.
Right.
They do whatever it takes to say, I'm here, we're for you, you're with you. And he's tweeting and he's comparing the amount of deaths between this and another hurricane that happened in 2005, 12 years ago. It just makes no sense to our whole country, but as a Republican, to our party.
It makes no sense. It's completely insensitive. And again, it just, I know the problem with the racism of Trump and his administration, there's always plausible deniability, and he could
explain that again. That's
plausible deniability is that you're not outright racist. So he could say this isn't about race, and I think that's true. That's true of Breitbart. That's true of a number of alt-right.
Because they're not coming right out and saying what Hitler did about the Jews.
Hispanics are lazy, but when you look at a consistent negative view towards black and brown people, and then a consistent. He called the mayor of San Juan nasty, and yet he referred to, the people in the alt-right white supremacy parade as, some very fine people. There's a benefit of the doubt afforded to white people that is not afforded to black and brown people. Yeah. And when that message is consistent over and over and over again, that's systemic racism with plausible deniability, which is actually more dangerous than the white supremacy rally. Because at the white supremacy rally, we can call out what they're doing and saying, that's racist. This is just smoke and mirrors, And
I wish it was the case that we didn't have to continually, every time we talk, bring up this issue. And I know many of my friends on the right, and I'm talking to a lot of you right now, this issue doesn't grab you. It to you is just hot air or... that's not really a winning issue.
Well, but it doesn't grab them, Paul, because it is that plausible deniability, and then they buy it. It's just, well, no, that's all coincidental. It's not about race. It's just that the brown people happen to be. Right. They buy the plausible deniability. Yeah. They're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that Trump's a racist, but I'm absolutely convinced that he knows how to rally his base, and he knows that.
Well, But at the end of the day, if he's rallying his racist base, that's racist. You know what I mean? He may not be personally racist. He may not buy all of this, but he knows enough American people do. Yeah. And that's systemic racism. That's when you
Right.
You use your whiteness and your privilege in order to oppress other people. Yeah. So either way that it's happening, it points back to Trump.
And what concerns me as a Republican is just, again, so many people that I speak with, this misses them. One person is up in arms, no pun intended, about the Second Amendment, but just really doesn't care about this kind of stuff. Another guy that, is telling me there are only 5,000 white supremacists in the country, and the whole thing is an inflated idea created by the media. And Dana Rohrabacher, our congressman, said that Charlottesville was a big hoax and it's a bunch of baloney. Tell that to Heather Hayer's family, but there's this kind of...
Well, and I think this is where, we're running into so many problems with the division and the partisan attitudes. For whatever reason, social justice has become a Democratic issue. It has become a denial in the Republican Party. And social justice should not be partisan.
Right.
Racial justice should not be partisan. It doesn't make any sense. But we have become so divided, and I don't really know where this started, but I do think that denying systemic racism has become a platform of the Republican Party.
Right, and Pew came out with an amazing study today, and Chris and I were looking at it just a second ago. I wish I could show you the graphic, but we're going to read a couple of these to you. And so they poll every single year Republicans and Democrats, and one of the questions they've asked since 1994, here's one of the questions: government should do more to help the needy. In 1994, 38% of Democrats, Republicans agreed with that, and 58% of Democrats agreed with that. Does that sound right? I don't want to make this wonky, but today, in 2017, asked the exact same question: government should do more to help the needy. 24% of Republicans believe that. It went down from 38 to 24%. And 71% of Democrats agree. So theirs went up from 58 to 71. But the main thing, if you're looking at this graph, is this huge divide to the question, government should do more to help the needy.
Whereas, we used to be relatively similar in 1994 in, about half of people agreeing the government should do more. Now it's almost like Democrats across the board think yes, and Republicans across the board think no. And again, helping the needy, that really shouldn't be a partisan thing either.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, and you've heard me say it before. One party shouldn't have the monopoly. And when I look at these numbers, this one's the most intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Immigrants strengthen the country with their hard work and talents. In 1994, 30% of the Republicans said yes. 32% of the Democrats said yes.
So neck and neck.
They're neck and neck. They all agree that immigrants strengthen the country with their hard work and talents.
Actually, most, it's a minority. Both Democrats and Republicans don't. 70% don't think.
So
that's fascinating.
Yeah. Today, guys, 84% of Democrats believe immigrants strengthen the country with their hard work and talents, and 42% of Republicans do. That gap is unbelievable. These are two countries. This
is kind of fascinating, though, because I think it's not just that the Republicans have pulled away from social justice, it's Democrats have also pushed in.
Clearly,
so Democrats have become, if you want to use the word bleeding heart liberal, which it's derogatory, but whatever. But if you want to use that word, we've leaned into that.
Yeah.
And Republicans have leaned away.
Yeah. And just one more wonky thing. So here's the last question. Racial discrimination is the main reason why many black people can't get ahead these days. For the Republicans, 26% of them used to agree with that in 94. Today, 14% of them believe that. 14%. It went
racial discrimination.
It was cut in half.
But it also, again, went up. 39% for Democrats, now 64%. So again, Democrats are if you want to say becoming more woke, and they are absolutely beginning to believe these narratives about racial discrimination. And, again, we have Republicans leaning away.
Yeah. And what I want to say is the Republican Party needs to establish itself as a part of the solution with respect to human rights, civil rights, and social justice. As a Christian, most of the Republicans I know, in one way or another, are really generous people that have good hearts. Mm-hmm. But somehow we're losing the PR game. So
I think most of the Republicans I know have good hearts. I don't know about the generosity. Tithing is one thing. But, when you've got your fellow citizens without insurance and you don't want to do anything about it, when you've got, DREAM Act citizens being at risk of deportation and you don't want to do anything about it, I think the generosity kind of depends on how you, are they giving to, the local Orange County Performing Arts Fund, or are they giving to, actually people in need? I don't know. Anyway.
And it comes down to the mistaken right-wing, not conservative, but right-wing ideology that it's a level playing field. Yeah. I had an uncle and he sucked it up and he did it, so all these lazy people in Watts, they can do it too.
Well, and again, I've preached this a million times, but it's imperative that people understand the difference between racial privilege and economic privilege. Black people can have more economic privilege than me or you. I was born to a middle-class family. Yes, I know Black people that were born with more economic privilege. They're still Black. They're still Black. They still are followed into store. They are still pulled over at a higher rate. It doesn't matter how rich you are, and we can see this with, wealthy ball players who are questioned about, the car that they drive, or wealthy business people who are questioned about the neighborhood that they live in.
Or Republican Senator Tim Scott,
there we go,
who stood in front of the United States Senate and said, as a senator,
right,
he had been pulled over 7 times.
Right. So,
he's Black.
Again, does not matter if these people, had their college paid for, or, grew up in a nicer house than you.
They're still Black.
They're still Black.
Or Muslim.
Racial privilege, economic privilege, not the same thing. And when people go into that, well, I had to work hard. That's not what we're talking about. It's just, you just sound daft.
Yeah, that's more of an economic,
right,
economic reality. But again, those that live in privilege, my white Republican Christian friends, they just don't experience it. And again, I know, but we just need to move on. But you have a very different reality given your situation.
Yeah, because I'm watching my boys experience the same kind of discrimination, and All right, so that was Puerto Rico. That was devastating. That was, a national tragedy. And then a week later, we've got a mass shooting in Las Vegas, the largest thus far. 58 deaths. There are still hundreds of people in the hospital.
There were, 400 or 500, right?
Yeah,
injured,
yeah. And, again, it's like, it's so tough because, this is a personal tragedy for many people. And, our thoughts and prayers are with them. But it does seem like we keep repeating this, trope of thoughts and prayers. And at the end of the day, we're living in a country where this is happening at an alarming rate. We look at other developed countries that have put forth legislation to reduce the kinds of weapons that allow someone to do something. This level of mass killing. And if you watched the footage, it was devastating.
I saw it last night for the first time.
Traumatic footage of the people there, and you heard the rapid fire of the machine gun. These are the kinds of guns that people have access to in the United States. This guy, I'm seeing reports he bought all of these guns within the last year.
No, he had 47 total. He bought 30 of them in the last 11 months.
30 of them in the last 11 months. Like, why? I mean, I have to get a driver's license to drive. I'm doing construction on my house. I had to get a city permit to make sure it's safe. Why? Is this allowed to happen? And
so playing the right and the devil's advocate, people are going to say the Second Amendment is an enumerated right. And the framers were very deliberate about putting that language in there. Though there are nuances to that, we all know the reason that they put it in there was because of where they come from. They want to make sure that we had an armed citizenry, number one. Number two, there was one bullet that you could put in that sucker, and you shoot it, and then 2 minutes later you got another one going.
Right.
Never did they dream of automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons.
Right, and someone said it's not a machine gun. Granted, yes, it's a automatic, but
and then with these little whatever they're called that they're putting in them, I forgot what it's called, but there was a big talk today.
Yeah, they can boost.
Yeah, they can boost the output.
And here's the deal. I think that people should have the right to own guns. I just don't think they should be able to buy this type. There is no civilian reason to own a gun like this.
Yeah.
No civilian reason. Your house is being robbed, you don't need a semi-automatic. You're going hunting, you don't need a semi-automatic. These are made for mass loss of life, and there's just no reason for people to own them.
Yeah. So I pulled up the Australia solution, and what happened in Australia is that they instituted something called the National Firearms Agreement, outlawing all civilian access to semi-automatic rifles and pump-action shotguns. And in an 18-year period between 79 and 96, Australia experienced 13 mass shootings. Okay, so this is over basically a 20-year period, 13 mass shootings, defined as having 5 or more victims. 104 people had died. In the 21 years and 5 months since the institution of this, they have seen 0 mass shootings. And so what did they do? It was really simple. The ban saw a time-limited income tax levy imposed to enable the market price buyback of some 750,000 banned weapons. And so these types of common sense measures, we have 300 million guns in this country, but the idea is that if we're going to ban people from 7 countries, refugees who have never killed anyone in this country ever, in the name of making America safe again, it would seem just kind of be common sense to impose something like a buyback program.
It would. And here's the thing, too. Why are we so freaking prideful as a nation? I mean, I'm a mom. As a mom, when something's going awry with my children, I talk to other moms. Oh, how are you dealing with this thing? I learn from them. If one of my kids is going sideways or going off the rails, I read, I research, I talk to other people, I see what works, and I try to implement it at my house. I don't think that I have the only solution. And it's like, why can we not do this as a country? Why can we not look at Australia and go, oh, they might have this figured out. Let's do that.
Because of an acronym, NRA, the largest special interest group in the country, with revenues of somewhere around $400 million a year, who every time this country tries to impose anything, really anything, including a federal database, it just doesn't matter. They are going to throw their lawyers, they're going to lobby, and they are going to prevent any kind of common sense measure. We can't get this thing done in Australia like they did in Australia in this country, which is no violation of the Second Amendment whatsoever. You want to sell your gun, we'll buy it back from you. No big deal. But the NRA will do everything in their power and actually will gain money and membership anytime they're as they are now. And they gave Trump $30 million. And so when this thing happened, did Trump say we got to do something about gun safety in this country? Of course not. It's disgusting.
It's so gross. It's about money. It's about an organization and money. And I have to say, again, I'm not against guns. I personally don't own a gun. That's my personal opinion. My parents own guns. I grew up in a household where I knew where the guns were. You want to own your gun, have fun with it. But I just think it's important to recognize for every citizen that NRA's interests are not in the benefit of our country and its citizens, its children, its people. And, own your guns, but I just think everyone should reconsider involvement in the NRA.
Yeah. And if
make a new club. Make a new club.
Yeah.
It's just like the Republican Party. It's like you can do better.
Yeah. We can do better. And I do think I was talking to a mom today that I think might be joining us right now, and a mom with 4 kids. She lives locally, very, very staunch right-wing, Republican. I don't know about right-wing, but just very, very worked in campaigns and all that kind of stuff, and just said it doesn't make any sense. Like, we have people like machine gunning people down, basically, and as a mom, that bugs me.
Yeah.
And I do think there's going to be a backlash, even amongst Republican, I think moms more than the dads, just saying, we don't want this country to be like this. We're not giving to the NRA. Like, if they're going to block safety from happening in our country, we're not buying in.
Right.
And then you have,
I agree. All right, something else that happened actually just today is Governor Jerry Brown of California, our state, signed a sanctuary state ruling, which basically provides some exceptions for California from the federal mandates against immigrants. And so it, in a sense, allows us a little more autonomy on the state level in determining what we do and what rules we follow that the federal government have put forward about immigrants. So it's interesting. And there is some talk about whether or not, the federal government might fight this. But as it stands, they have sort of, and constitutionally, I mean, this is how the Constitution is set up for all of, and it's funny for all the folks that want to fight about, the Second Amendment. I have a feeling these same folks may be against this, but constitutionally, we're set up for states to have autonomy, and California is basically saying, dude, no, we're not playing. Like, we have immigrants that are living here, and we're not going to follow these mandates that have been put forth to, capture and deport.
Yeah. I just think this immigration issue is so complicated, and maybe that's a cop-out. It's obvious that it's complicated, but man, it just seems like nobody knows what to do, and people have very strong opinions about it. The bottom line is you're not going to deport 12 million people.
No.
That is, even though they're illegal, so to speak,
Well, and here's the thing too. It's not even that California is saying, hey, they all get to stay, but also, we also just don't want to spend our tax dollars on that. Of all the things in California that we need to be worried about, do we want to drain our resources going after illegal immigrants? Probably not. We've got other fish to fry in the state,
Yeah, it's complicated. I don't know how we get out of the weeds on the immigration issue because, I just don't know why these are all left versus right issues, though. And that's kind of what we try really hard to, move ourselves to the center, Kristen and I, and identify these issues as American problems, not as Democrat or Republican problems. But the gun one is probably the biggest no-brainer of everything we've ever talked about.
Yeah.
We want less people to die with, at the hands of people that had 50 guns and tens of thousands of rounds.
Yes.
And no one knew, really.
Yeah, and we are in agreement on that. And again, I don't think that should be a partisan issue. And in fact, I think it's becoming less and less. I just started doing another podcast called Selfie, where we talk about self-care. It's a little fluffier than this conversation. But we did have a discussion about self-care in the midst of these kinds of tragedies. And we directed our listeners to an organization, and you can check that out on, it's up at selfiepodcast.com. I would say the URL, but I don't know it. But it's an organization of...
like selfie, like you take a selfie?
Yeah, selfiepodcast.com. But we've got the organization up right now, and it's an organization of moms that have basically banded together, and it's bipartisan, who have said, let's work together.
That's cool.
Again, we don't want to take everyone's guns away. And, and I think that tends to be the argument. You want to take our guns away. I don't want to take anybody's gun away. I just want to ban, people from being able to purchase, and I think we should talk about a buyback.
Totally. And that's just where, as a Republican, I'm a common sense Republican. The congressman in this district voted to move the waiting period from 3 days to 1.
Yeah.
From 3 days to 1 day.
It's insane.
That doesn't make any
It's
sense.
absurd.
I don't know whose rights are being violated in such a situation.
This is political, and
but that kind of right wing, it's nonsensical.
It is.
And I think our party, I think our party is going to sober up and just realize,
so.
You know what? It's getting, some of these things are just kooky, and we don't want to identify with some of these policies. And again,
I hope you're right. I'm more cynical than you, Paul. I just think that it's because, in the numbers you showed, we're just...
Yeah, that's true.
Becoming more and more entrenched. What I will say about this, where I'm not quite as cynical, is I do think that the millennials are more represented in the Democratic and more liberal thinking.
There's no doubt there.
So I think that some of this shift is generational as well. And I think younger people are watching what's going on going, I don't think this feels right. Mm-hmm. They're growing up. My freaking kids are growing up doing intruder drills at school where they hide in closets. They're learning what to do if a mass shooter comes. When I was a kid, we did tornado drills.
Yeah, we did.
Doing intruder drills.
We did Russia drills, nuke drills when I was really young.
Yeah, that's true.
That was great.
But I think, the kids that are growing up in this, I think it makes less sense to them. I think there's a cause and effect that hasn't, the rhetoric has not taken hold with them yet. And so they're still able to kind of sit outside of a partisan, entrenched, out of my cold dead hands idea, which is ridiculous. Right. And they're able to be a little more discerning.
And I think one of the challenges is what news are you watching?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have confirmation bias.
Very true.
And I hate to say it, but there are certain news organizations that they're not. It's not news. They're just telling you who's right and who's wrong. And and that's not going to be helpful.
No.
I think everyone should just listen to NPR and watch PBS, and they're going to get a pretty balanced viewpoint.
Or, you know what? Go outside the States. Watch the BBC.
Yeah.
Watch Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is great.
Yeah.
Watch the Young Turks.
Yeah.
See what people outside of the U.S. are saying. But people who don't have these parties.
And, I have to say to Donald Trump, he did, I've thrown him under the bus 1,000 times, both here and in things I've written, but, I did think he was onto a couple of things. And one was draining the swamp. There was a sense of him saying, look, 30-year, 40-year politicians that have been there forever are not representing the people. They have really good government jobs. Mm-hmm. And I really do think, as much as I disagree with him on so many things, as everyone knows about, I do think that there was just something about, Congress has a 16% approval rating. 16.
But do you think that he has even come close to draining the swamp?
No.
I mean, I agree that was a great idea. I mean, I'm not so partisan that I can't say that there are some, certain great ideas. I mean, I thought that was a great campaign platform. I would love to actually see the swamp drained, but I think he actually did the opposite.
Well, in terms of his appointments, he certainly did.
Yeah, in terms of his appointment. Well, that was the whole thing. He was going to drain the swamp of
But I think I'm
dirty
thinking
politicians.
maybe more of Congress and and there was that congressman today. Did you hear about that?
Who had his side chick get an abortion?
Encouraged her to get an abortion.
Yeah.
And this is a guy that's an anti-abortion
he resigned.
lawyer. He's a congressman, an anti-Republican abortion lawyer. And again, I'll call out Democrats, I'll call out Republicans. As a Republican, yet again, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because one of our, pro-life, anti-abortion lawyers had a mistress who was half his age. She was a psychologist, and he texted her and told her to get an abortion. And he's gone now. They bounced him out because they thought it was going to make them look bad. But how much worse can you look than 16%?
Yeah. And, I mean, very quickly, we've also got weird stuff going on with Trump's daughter and her email. And, literally, Trump's children have done the exact same crime that he accused Hillary of, that he wanted to lock Hillary up over.
Oh, I missed you. What'd you say?
The emails.
Oh, yeah.
Sending...
oh, my God.
Sending emails to a specific server. I mean, they've done pretty much, the equivalent of what he kept, what the whole campaign about
and Kushner
Hillary was
admitted
about.
it. So this isn't fake news. This isn't CNN.
Are we going to lock him up? Are we going to start those memes? I mean,
Yeah, Kushner admitted that he did this, people. So.
And to be totally honest, I don't think that this is the most horrible thing in the world. I think there are a lot worse things happening. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy that, this offense was one that he tried to get a special counsel to indict Hillary over. And yet, it's just completely ignored when it happens in the nepotism.
Well, and it's interesting, though, I think the big difference, because Kushner obviously is high security clearance. And so it is apples to apples in that way.
Yeah.
But I saw Hillary a month ago on 60 Minutes. I respect her in certain ways. Her career, I like that she's a woman that worked really hard. And, there's good things I could say about her. But her shadiness was as evident on 60 Minutes during this interview. Just bouncing around the issues and not really admitting stuff. Kushner comes out and says, yeah, I did it. It took Hillary 2 years to finally say, well, yeah, and that's just, to me, the difference. And I'm not condoning what Kushner did, but there is something different when there's transparency. Yeah, I did. Where with Hillary, it was just deleting, scrubbing, acid washing. What did they call it? Those are genes or something. I don't know.
Acid washing. Yes, that's it. All right. Well, I think that's it for this week.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Hit us up in the comments, guys. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this, and catch us next week. Thanks.